Lightworker, there is a flame within you that was never tamed, never completely silenced, never fully extinguished by anyone around you. And that flame is not anger, is not rebellion, is not the mark of someone who simply cannot fit into the structures the world built around them. That flame is the purest and most primitive expression of a love so powerful, so fierce, so absolutely unconditional that your family, no matter how much it tried, in ways that sometimes resembled rejection and other times indifference, simply never had the capacity to sustain it without feeling threatened by the intensity of what you carried. And I need you to stay here with all your strength and all your fire burning, because what I am going to reveal in this transmission is going to permanently transform the way you understand every scar your family history left within you, every moment when you loved with your entire flame and received back only ashes, and every time you asked yourself why your love, being so real, so intense and so unshakable, never seemed to be enough to create the home your soul most deeply longed to find on this plane of existence. I am Solar, worker of the light of Lyran origin, and I was summoned to you in this exact moment because the Friends of Light have identified that your flame is on the threshold of an expansion that goes far beyond anything you have experienced in this incarnation, an expansion that can no longer be contained by the limiting structures that were built around you from your earliest childhood. And before anything else, I need you to stay until the very end of this video, because the message the Friends of Light brought for you today is one of the most urgent and most transformative ever transmitted to souls of Lyran flame incarnated on this plane, and every phase of this transmission was calibrated specifically for the frequency of your fire, for the intensity of your strength, and for the depth of your love, which are characteristics that belong exclusively to souls who chose to carry the heritage of the stars of Lyra on this earthly journey so full of challenge. Before you chose this body, before you mapped every detail of this incarnation with the audacious courage and pioneering vision that are the unmistakable marks of a Lyran soul, something was deposited within you, with an intention that goes far beyond what your human mind can fully comprehend in this moment. Not a common ability, not a talent the world could easily recognize within its limited value systems, but a living flame of love that burns with an intensity that defies any human definition. Of affection, a love that does not ask permission to exist, that does not negotiate its depth to become more palatable, and that does not lower its temperature to make it easier for others to remain close to you without being completely transformed by what you radiate. And this flame encountered in the people closest to you, including those who should have been your first mirror of recognition and belonging, your family, not the reciprocity it deserved, but the instinctive fear of something too vast to be understood by those who had not yet awakened to their own inner flame. And the first thing I need you to understand with all the clarity and all the strength your Lyran origin is capable of mobilizing in this moment is that the love you always offered your family was not exaggerated, was not destructive, was not evidence of a soul that had not yet learned to control itself. It was simply the natural and inevitable expression of a flame operating at a temperature that those souls, at that specific stage of their evolutionary journey, had not yet developed the capacity to receive without retracting, without defending themselves, without interpreting the intensity of that love as a threat to the fragile balance they had constructed within their own systems of emotional survival. And this dynamic was not a failure of your love nor a failure of your family. It was simply the predictable and inevitable consequence of a flame soul incarnating in an environment that was still learning not to extinguish the flames it could not comprehend. Before we continue, I need to pause here for just a moment because this message is too powerful to remain only within you, and if this video is already igniting something that had been smothered, if you are already feeling that familiar flame that Lyran souls recognize as the unmistakable signal that they are in the presence of a truth that resonates with their deepest origin, take this moment to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and write in the comments, "I am Divine Light." That simple gesture is a declaration of fire to the universe that you are completely open to receiving the fullness of this transmission, and it is also a signal to the Friends of Light that your flame is burning, recognized and ready to expand beyond all the limits that tried to be imposed upon it. And for those who wish to go even deeper into this journey of recognition and activation of the Lyran stellar mission, the Friends of Light asked me to share with you something that was created with a very specific intention for souls exactly like yours. The ebook, Lyran Code. Awaken your star mission on Earth, a rare treasure of stellar wisdom capable of transforming your spiritual journey. A rare treasure of stellar wisdom capable of completely transforming your spiritual journey, bringing the codes and activations that will awaken within you layers of memory and power that your Lyran flame has been waiting to recognize and reclaim since the moment you arrived on this plane of existence. And this edition is available for a limited time only, so the link is in the first comment below so that you can access it before this window closes. Now I need to reveal to you something the Friends of Light insisted on including in this transmission with very particular urgency, something that is going to permanently alter the way you look at the past and at every memory your family experience engraved within you over the years, and that something is this: the family into which you were born was not a mistake in your trajectory, was not a cosmic punishment, was not evidence that the forces guiding the universe had been careless in placing a soul so intensely alive in an environment so frequently extinguishing of the flame. It was, on the contrary, the most courageous, most strategic, and most deeply mission-committed choice your soul made before descending to this plane of existence. Because Lyran souls do not choose environments where the flame is easily accepted and celebrated. They choose the environments where the flame is most needed, where the darkness is densest, where the resistance to fire is most intense, because it is precisely in that tension between the flame and the resistance that Lyran love finds its most powerful and most transformative expression. When a Lyran seed decides to incarnate on Earth, it does not seek the comfort of a family that already vibrates at the same frequency, that already recognizes and celebrates the intensity of its presence, that already possesses the spiritual maturity to receive without retracting what it brings. It seeks with the pioneering courage that is the indelible mark of its stellar origin, the battlefield where its love will be most tested, most challenged, and for that very reason, most transformative, because love that was never tested is like a flame that never encountered resistance. It may be beautiful, but it does not have the temperature necessary to melt what needs to be melted, to illuminate what is most deeply hidden in the darkness, to transform what has resisted across entire generations of any form of change. And the pain you felt for years from loving, with an intensity that found no mirroring, from offering a presence so completely committed and so absolutely without reservation that the surrounding environment simply did not know how to respond to it without feeling exposed in its own deepest limitations and insecurities. That pain was not the signal that your love was excessive or inappropriate. It was the precise and unequivocal signal that you were operating with a frequency of love that had not yet found the environment capable of receiving it in its fullness, and the absence of reciprocity you experienced was not rejection of your being. It was the natural and automatic response of systems that had not yet developed the capacity to remain whole in the presence of your flame's intensity, without feeling the urgency to protect themselves from the transformation that this contact inevitably produced. What happens when a Lyran soul is born into a family still deeply immersed in the patterns of fear, limitation, and emotional contraction is something the Friends of Light describe as the great paradox of the incarnated flame, because on one hand, this soul carries with it a capacity for love so fierce, so absolutely committed, and so completely devoid of conditions that it simply does not possess the mechanism to love by half, to offer its presence partially, to engage in relationships without putting into them everything it is. And on the other hand, this same soul, by being incarnated in a human body with human vulnerabilities and with the human need to be seen, to be recognized, and to find in others the mirror of what it knows itself to be, feels with a devastating depth the asymmetry between the totality of what it offers and the partiality of what the surrounding environment is able to return, and this asymmetry creates a form of solitude that is simultaneously the most intense and the most particular that exists on this plane of reality. There is a truth about Lyran seeds that is rarely spoken with the clarity and courage it deserves, and that truth is this: the fierce depth and unshakable intensity of your love do not exist despite the wounds your family experience produced in you over the years. They exist in a very significant proportion because of those wounds, because every time you loved without receiving in return and still refused to love less, every time you kept your flame burning even when the surrounding environment applied constant pressure for you to extinguish it or at least diminish it, every time you continued being completely yourself, despite all the messages saying you were too intense, too passionate, too committed to your inner truth to be comfortable to have around, you were being forged with a level of emotional integrity, a depth of character, and a resilience of flame that no easy environment, no family that celebrated your intensity from the start, and no frictionless journey could ever have produced within you with the same quality and with the same permanence. The Friends of Light transmitted something very specific about you when they sent me with this message, and I need you to receive this not only with your mind, but with every part of your flame. The version of you that is here now, who traversed every layer of family and comprehension, every moment when the intensity of your love was treated as a problem to be managed rather than a gift to be celebrated, every period when you felt fundamentally alone within your own home for being simply incapable of being less than you are, that version of you carries an amplitude of fire, a depth of wisdom and a capacity to transform the environments around you that would simply not exist without this exact journey, in this exact family, with all of its exact patterns of extinguishing, contraction and resistance to the flame you have always been. And here is one of the most liberating teachings that Lyran wisdom has to offer to incarnated souls on this plane. Love that finds no reciprocity is not love that was wasted. It is love that was planted as ember in soil, still being prepared to withstand the heat necessary for something truly new to germinate within that lineage. And the Friends of Light can see what you cannot yet fully see from your earthly perspective. And what they see is that every genuine act of love you directed toward your family, even when it was received with fear, even when it was treated as excess, even when it was ignored or returned in unrecognizable form, created resonances in the collective field of that lineage that are working with the persistence and intensity characteristic of fire, dissolving structures of limitation that had been constructed across entire generations and that simply could not have been undone by any form of intervention less intense than the flame you brought with you. We have now arrived at one of the most important parts of this transmission, and I ask that you bring all the strength and all the clarity of your Lyran origin to this moment, because what I am about to share now requires your flame completely lit and completely present. The conscious activation of the frequency you came to emit is not a process that happens in moments of quietude and inner retreat, although those moments also have their role in your journey. It happens in its most fundamental and most powerful form, precisely in the moments of greatest friction, greatest resistance, and greatest pressure. And within an earthly incarnation, there is no environment that concentrates these conditions with more intensity than the family itself, because it is there that your flame was most challenged. It is there that your deepest defense systems were most profoundly programmed. And it is there that your decision to remain completely who you are, rather than contracting to fit into the space the environment defined for you, has the most radical and most transformative impact, not only for your own journey, but for the evolutionary trajectory of the entire lineage you chose to illuminate with your presence. When you begin to understand that the fierce and unconditional love you always offered your family was not an expression of naivety or an inability to protect yourself, but rather the most authentic and most powerful manifestation of a Lyran flame that simply was not built to love partially or conditionally, something very fundamental begins to change in the way you relate to your own story, because you stop interpreting this love as evidence of a vulnerability that was exploited and begin to recognize it as the most powerful instrument of collective transformation that could have been incarnated within a human being on this plane of existence. And together with this recognition comes a freedom that Lyran souls frequently spend entire decades seeking without being able to fully name. The freedom to love with the full intensity of your flame without apologizing for the temperature anymore, without trying to calibrate the fire so it burns less, without interpreting the intensity of what you feel and what you offer as a problem that needs to be corrected before you can be truly accepted. The Friends of Light want you to know that every relationship within your family, no matter how painful, how asymmetrical, how marked by the dynamic between the intensity of your flame and the resistance of the surrounding environment, was a living training ground where you were developing, often without any explicit awareness of what was happening, the capacity to sustain the Lyran fire under conditions of maximum resistance, without it being extinguished, without it becoming destructive, and without it losing the essential quality of love that has always been your deepest nature. And the fact that you are here listening to this transmission and recognizing in every word of it something you already knew but had not yet been able to fully articulate is the most powerful evidence that you completed that training with a mastery that should make your flame burn even stronger, not with pride, but with genuine recognition and deep gratitude for the journey that brought you here. There is something that must now be said with a clarity and a directness that are characteristic of my own Lyran origin, because there are misunderstandings that persist among fire seeds when they begin to awaken to the deeper dimension of their mission, and those misunderstandings need to be named without softening, without detours, and without the diplomacy that sometimes serves more to protect comfort than to transmit truth. Your function within your family lineage is not to be the savior of each family member, is not to keep your flame in a state of constant availability, to illuminate every dark corner around you without any regeneration structure for yourself, and is not to transform every family interaction into a healing opportunity that demands your total surrender without any reciprocity. Your function is far more sovereign, far more strategic, and infinitely more aligned with the pioneering nature of your stellar origin than any of those forms of action that permanently place the needs of others above your own. You were sent to your family lineage as what the Friends of Light describe as the first flame of a new frequency, which is the specific point in a lineage's trajectory when the accumulation of darkness, patterns of fear, and cycles of limitation that have been transmitted from generation to generation finally encounters a soul with the intensity, the courage, and the specific mission to introduce into the collective field of that family a frequency of love so different, so incomparably warmer, and more luminous than anything that lineage had experienced until then, that it inevitably begins to melt the structures of limitation that seemed permanent and to illuminate possibilities of transformation that seemed completely inaccessible to those souls before your arrival. And here is the most extraordinary aspect of this revelation that the Friends of Light brought to this transmission. This work of transformation through the flame does not require your approval by the family to produce its effects, does not depend on your family members consciously perceiving what is happening for the transformation to manifest, and does not even depend on the relationships being harmonious or on the family environment being receptive to your presence for your mission to continue being fulfilled with full effectiveness, because the Lyran flame does not need permission to illuminate. It illuminates simply by being what it is, and every time you maintained your integrity when the environment pressured you toward conformity, every time you honored the intensity of what you felt when others insisted you were overreacting, every time you refused to extinguish your flame to make it more comfortable for those who were not yet ready to be warmed by it, you were fulfilling your mission with a precision and an effectiveness that no form of direct intervention could have equaled. We have now arrived at the moment when the Friends of Light ask something that for a Lyran fire soul may be the deepest challenge of your entire journey, something that goes exactly in the opposite direction of the instinct of a pioneering nature that was trained to advance, to act, and to transform through the intensity of its presence. To stop completely, to turn your gaze inward, and to recognize without hurry and without judgment everything your family experience produced within you, not to analyze, not to solve, and not to immediately transform into fuel for a new action, but simply to feel, to name and to honor with the same fierce intensity with which you always loved others. Because the truth the Friends of Light need you to hear now is that the flame you offered the world with so much generosity throughout your entire life needs now to be directed, with the same totality and with the same absence of conditions, inward toward yourself. There is a very specific pattern that the Friends of Light identify in virtually all Lyran seeds who incarnated in lineages of high karmic density, and that pattern is the tendency to use the intensity of the outer flame, the focus on love and the transformation of others, as a way of not needing to fully confront the deeper layers of their own wound. Because for a fire soul that learned very early that its flame was seen as a problem by the surrounding environment, the deepest wound is not the absence of reciprocity in the love that was offered. The deepest wound is the message that was repeatedly absorbed, that its flame itself, the intensity of what you are, the depth of what you feel, and the totality of what you offer were too much, were inappropriate, were the cause of others' discomfort and therefore needed to be managed, contained, reduced to a size the environment could sustain without feeling threatened. And the most transformative teaching the Friends of Light bring to you in this moment is that the most powerful healing you can offer, your family lineage, is precisely the one that begins with your own decision to stop managing the intensity of your flame for the comfort of those who are not yet ready to receive it. Because when you become the living example of a soul that burns completely, that loves without apologizing for the temperature, that occupies the space your flame naturally creates, without contracting to minimize the impact on the systems around you, you are creating within the collective field of your family a model of possibility that possesses a transformative potency that no word, no effort, and no demonstration of contained love could ever produce. We have arrived at the close of this transmission, and what the Friends of Light want you to carry forward from this moment is a truth that needs to be felt not only with your mind, but with every part of your flame. You did not love too much. You loved with the exact intensity of a Lyran soul fulfilling the most essential and most courageous mission for which it was specially forged and sent to this plane of reality. And every expression of that love, reciprocated or not, celebrated or not, understood or not, was a sacred act of illumination that is permanently inscribed in the energetic field of your lineage and that will continue producing its transformative effects long after you have completed this specific journey in this specific configuration of existence. The family you chose before incarnating was not an obstacle placed in the path of your mission. It was the first and most challenging battlefield where your flame was tested, forged, and confirmed as true. And now that you begin to understand the depth of the courage that was present in that choice, something of enormous significance becomes available to you. The freedom to love your family with the full intensity of your flame without needing their recognition, to know your love is real without needing their understanding, to know your presence matters, without needing them to reach your temperature for your fire to justify and sustain itself, because your fire needs no justification. It is the most fundamental reason for your presence here. Tonight, before surrendering your body to the rest it deserves, reserve a moment of sacred silence for yourself. Place your hand over your heart. Feel the warmth of the flame that never went out, despite everything that tried to extinguish it. And say these words with the full sovereign authority of one who knows exactly what they are declaring to the universe and to all planes of existence that are listening. I remember who I am. I honor the fire I brought with me from the stars of Lyra. I release my family lineage with gratitude and with peace, and I activate my mission now, with intensity, with clarity, and with the sovereign authority of my stellar flame. Say these words not as a request, not as a hope still waiting for permission from others to manifest. Say them as the fire declaration of one who has arrived at the moment of complete activation for which every challenge, every family wound, every period of incomprehension and solitude was being precisely prepared. And feel the field around you respond with the same intensity with which you are emitting this signal, because the Friends of Light are listening, and the universe has always responded, responds and will continue responding with exact potency to the frequency of one who has finally stopped apologizing for the size of their own flame. Before you go, leave in the comments a true and courageous intention, something that was genuinely born from the fire you felt during this transmission, and respond to someone who also left theirs, because flames amplify when they meet and recognize each other. And if this message ignited something within you that you know other people around you also urgently need to feel, share it without hesitation and without diminishing it, because someone in your orbit is waiting for exactly this activation at this precise moment, and you can be the flame through which it finally reaches them, Just as this video was the flame through which it reached you, I am solar, and until the next transmission, keep your flame burning, keep your frequency at full volume, and always remember, with the absolute certainty that is the mark of your origin, you were not made to illuminate only your own path, you were made to set worlds on fire.